Have you been experiencing internal financial struggles triggered by economic concerns? Are you feeling capped at your current income level and can't seem to realize your financial potential? Energy healer Jean Border has created an emotional freedom technique, or EFT, tapping protocol to help calm the inner voice that keeps you stressed. Claim your free copy at jeanborder.com/vow and say goodbye to those financial blockages. Welcome to another episode of the Focused Practical Dreamer's Journey podcast, Energy Work to Better Your Business, hosted by energy healer Jean Border. It's not just about dreaming, it's about making those dreams a practical reality. Subscribe to us via your favorite network by visiting our website at www.focusedpracticaldreamer.com. Now, get ready. Your journey to success starts here.
Hello, everyone. It's your host, Jean Border, with another episode of the Focused Practical Dreamer's Journey podcast, where we talk everything business with a slant on energy work, mindset work, and psychology, and how you can use that to better your business. I have a special guest with me here today, Amanda McCallister, and she's got a really cool story. But before we get there, I want to remind everyone that in the show notes below, there is a free resource for you. If you are struggling with financial decisions or your financial situation, please grab the PDF, do a few rounds of tapping, EFT tapping, right? I'm really big on tapping to calm down your nervous system so you can make those decisions and view that situation from a place of calm rather than stress or tension, or fear, or reaction. Just a few little tapping rounds, just like what I did there. You can use this as your little guide as you tap through. jeanborder.com/vow or click on the link below. Okay, and now back to the show. Hello, Amanda McCallister. How are you? I'm so glad that you're here from Florida.
I'm doing really great, Jean. Thank you for having me.
Cool. So I know the weather has played a role in some things in Florida in the recent past, but I'm glad that you're here and you're healthy and you're happy and everything's working out for you. But tell the listeners a little bit about you.
So I am a native Floridian. So the weather likes to remind us that the only thing in the world that we really own are the relationships that we have with other people. When you start getting too big-headed about anything, Mother Nature swoops in and reminds you where you live and what your role in the world is. I am a business consultant. I help particularly women business owners who are starting to grow their business. They've moved out of, that solopreneur role and they realize that they can't do everything. They're not operating in their zone of genius. They need help. I help them figure out what kind of help they can afford, what kind of help is going to be most impactful for them and for their journey as an entrepreneur. And I'm also an artist. So I do help a number of artistic colleagues, if you will, figure out their business models as well, whether that's how I get my LLC started or what I do for a website and how do I subcontract those things. So I put on my business Barbie doll hat and I say, okay, here's how we take this creative genius that we have and monetize it and make money from it so that you can continue to bring creativity in the world and tell your story. I taught for 16 years in public schools in Florida, and that, I think, played a really big part in shaping my desire to help business owners around me and my sphere of influence grow and be the change that they wanted in their own lives. Because when you're an educator, you're really helping people figure out how to be autonomous and how to not depend on all the machinations in the world around you. And I think sometimes we need those reminders as adults too.
On one hand, I would love to be a teacher. On the other hand, no way, no how would I be a school teacher? So I applaud you for that for 16 years. And now you're doing the same thing, or maybe people who might be perhaps a little bit more emotionally stable. Hormones may be a little bit more stable, maybe not. But when we do start to grow our business, that is really hard because there's so much to learn, number one. Even when you start out and you think, oh, I've got this, I'm really good at this, but you're not good at things that you don't even know you need to know, like this and this and this and this and this and this and this. So getting all those ducks, even not only in a row, but in the same room is challenging, right? So how did you get from where you started to where you are now in your business, where you get to pick and choose to help all the artists in particular? I like that part.
So while I was teaching, I started a business with a group of students. I was a high school teacher, and I taught students that were in a pre-collegiate program. So I was really blessed. I had a great bunch of students, and they wanted to start a leadership organization in their high school that focused on building culture and building a culture of excellence, because all organizations, all communities, when people come together, a culture happens. And you can let that culture happen accidentally and whatever happens, happens, or you can be strategic about engineering cultures of quality, of excellence, of honesty, of vulnerability. And this group of students wanted to not just create it at their school, but to work on institutionalizing it and packaging it so it could be replicated in other places. We did that for 10 years. So 10 of the 16 years I taught, I worked with a long line of students in this nonprofit organization. We were in 13 schools across 7 school districts in Florida. And the work was very well received. The Florida Education Association gave the student group and myself their Human and Civil Rights Award for student leadership and leadership in public education in general. I like to think we impacted a lot of lives, a lot of students, a lot of families, and then a lot of cultures and schools that lived on beyond what we did. That is definitely the mark of a great leader is, can all of these things happen when you walk out the door and move forward to your next thing? And like you said, school is very unpredictable. And my social tribe had grown from, a manageable 250, 300 people between my family, my friends, and the students and alumni that were in my life to thousands. And that was emotionally a lot. So I stepped away from that career and tried to kind of do the same work, but on a community level with a public library and a not-for-profit fine arts organization in a small town in Florida. So I did that, and that paved the way for me to kind of step into corporate culture and remote working environments during the pandemic. So I started doing that on that corporate scale and decided that that was not the place for my ideas.
You're so politically correct. I love the way you're saying it.
Of all the places in the world that my ideas needed to land, that was not one of them. So I decided to more at the startup of companies and for-profit businesses, because it's one thing to build a culture from the ground up. We particularly worked with new schools. So starting fresh is way easier than looking at something that's broken and trying to re-engineer it. So that's how I landed with my ideal client of women in particular, because that's the lens that I look at the world through. New business owners or business owners who are starting to grow and realize that they are great web developers or fantastic roofers or whatever their thing is that they've built their business around, but they're not great people leaders. They're not natural born leaders. They're not good at inspiring a team. They're not good at sharing their vision. So then how do you take your passion while you're monetizing it and help drive a team with you to ensure customer success, quality in your business, and align with your values as a business owner so that you continue to love the job that you've built and the business that you've built for yourself.
You said so many things there, and my head just keeps spinning.
So
one of the things that I pushed really hard, I was in leadership positions, right, before I got into my small business world. Building teams was one of my passions. If you want a good product, if you want a good work environment, if you want a high-performing production model, you need to pay attention to your team. Who do you hire? What skills do you hire for? How do you train? And where does fear come into play too many times? One of my big statements that I pushed whenever I saw someone moving up the ladder a bit was, when you get into the positions of selecting new employees, think towards the future. And as you're training your staff, always be training your replacement. And that brought up so much fear for so many people. Oh, but it's my job. As long as you're doing your job, you're not going to be out of your job, right? But the more information you try to impart to someone else, the better you're going to get at feeling it in your body, understanding it, knowing it, and they're going to build trust with you because you trust them enough to teach them in that way. And then they want to help somebody else.
Mm-hmm. You know, I don't think a single idea has ever done the long depth and breadth of human history any good at all that rested in one person's head. A single idea doesn't do anything for humanity or civilization unless it's shared. And that means you have to trust, and you can't hoard information. You can't stop up your energy systems and your emotions with all the things that you know. You can't be so egocentric to think I'm the only one that can do this. And, you know, it's interesting that you said people being afraid of losing their job. You know, in some ways, I think for a lot of my W-2 life, working for someone else, I was afraid of keeping my job because I didn't want to stay in one place. I don't want to do this thing at the moment for the rest of my life. There's got to be something new out there for me, no matter what it is. There's got to be something else coming my way, you know?
There's also the idea of not allowing boredom to set in with your team, right?
Yes.
One of the things that frustrated me no end is that I was with a huge organization, okay? And there were opportunities all over the place that our people could, you know, short-term basis, 1 year, 2 years, whatever, short-term, it's all relative, take advantage of like overseas locations for a year or 2 or 3. But some of our leaders were, oh no, we can't, don't tell them about that because then they'll come back with more knowledge than they left with. They'll appreciate the fact that we gave them an opportunity they would not have had otherwise. But the fear, even from the leadership teams, was, oh, don't show them, don't advertise that that there are other opportunities for them out there. You think they don't know it?
Or they're going to find it out and be upset with you for not giving up the goods, you know? Like, when you invest in people, that investment always is a solid return. You know, I know people they dive hard into their ROAS and their ROAI, There is no greater asset in an organization than its human resources, its human capital. That is where major corporations, huge design innovations in the world, technology. We are in 2024 living the life that we are living right now because of the blessings of human innovation throughout history. And you have to give those ideas and that passion room to run.
Agree. So how do people come to you? What do they come to you for? What does that look like? Talk to me about your work.
Yeah. So most of my clients come to me because they are feeling overwhelmed. They feel like I want to help people with lead generation, but I don't want to be a content creator. Or, I wrote a book and now all of a sudden I can't keep track of my schedule because of podcasts and book signings and events that I'm supposed to be at, or, a multitude of stresses and overwhelms when they start to realize that they're successful. My clients come to me with the best problems in the world. They're doing so well that they can't do it on their own anymore. And it doesn't feel like a good problem at the time. I don't think any problem ever does feel like a good problem the moment that you're having it. But when you step back and look at it, you're like, oh, wait, this is the cool problem of success. So I think my clients come to me with the cool problem of success and they don't know what to do. And they come from a really good place of fear of, if I hire someone and this doesn't work out, what are they going to do for a job? How are they going to get paid? Or if I hire somebody and they don't take care of my customers the way I do, how do I fix that with my customers? So there's all of this fear of delegation. There's all of these emotional blocks of, well, what if I fail? What if this? What if that? And it's like, okay, let's clear out all the mess and let's think about, number one, what is overwhelming you? Let's just take a time study. Let's take an energy study and see what is really making you uncomfortable. Where does your body feel icky during the day? And then looking at the financial stuff. We do that. We dig in and we say, okay, what's the budget look like? What's the revenue consistency look like? We have to put numbers on some things to really have a good picture, because we are inviting people into our world when we hire them. And we may be asking them to leave one job for another job. And then all of a sudden this job falls through and you're kind of the jerk for taking them away from their way of providing for their family. So let's get a realistic perspective on the finances. And then finally, let's take a look at the strategy and let's really think about what you want. Because I do think that there are some people who are having the great problem of success who think, oh my goodness, I can scale my business from $500,000 to $5 million. I just need more people to do the thing. But then you realize doing the thing was the only thing that you loved, and the money doesn't do that for you. And now you're miserable in your business and you just want to shut it back down and go back to building websites or whatever it was that you were doing. So I really push, I think the most important thing that I do with my clients is push them to know where they want to go and know what their values are. Because if you lose sight of either one of those, those lines of sight, it gets rough quick, and you can't do that. You can't sacrifice something you've loved to be an operator of a business when you just really wanted to build websites.
One of my really common questions to a lot of my clients is, what do you want? Just the awareness is hard for some people. And me bringing them back on track, and they'll try to divert me here and divert me there. And I'm like, what do you want? Well, this and this and this happened. And did you? I'm like, no, what do you want? It can be really hard to focus on, because you get on a treadmill and you start making money, and the money comes in and it's nice and blah, blah, blah. But you haven't set boundaries. You don't know who you want to work with. You don't know what hours you're willing to work and which hours are messing up your family or your social life, right? So there's so many little technical things that we kind of need to address at some point, but we get focused on this and we lose track of all of this.
And I think that the artist I work with, which is I've run two different business tracks, if you will. The artist on their business track suffered the most from that. What do you want? I just want to make art, and it would be really great if art paid my bills. And I'm like, let's talk about that. Would it be really great if art paid your bills? Or is art your release? Is it your catharsis that you like to come home from your work and feel completely stressed and then get in your studio and paint, and it makes you feel creative and innovative and it just energizes you? And let's talk about all the things that now go with that when art pays your mortgage, because it is an entire industry of it in and of itself. And is that what you want? Do you want to be a content creator? Do you want to learn Facebook ads? Do you want to have to build your website? Do you want to have to create on a production schedule? Do you want to have to care if a piece is going to sell, or do you want to just create the work that you love? Because what you love may not be what your market decides they want to buy forever, or maybe they buy it for 6 months and then they're tired of you and you have to do something different. So that's a heavy question, Jean. It's a heavy question to ask. What do you want?
And that was a very interesting example because we don't think of that stuff, right? See, I'm a holistic healer. That's what I do. Holistic intuitive. The names change all the time depending on what flows out there. I work with people. We have conversations. Things change in their life. That's what I do, right? Bit intuitive. I've got a lot of leadership background. So I have a lot of skills that are squishy that you don't really see unless I say, I can do this and this, which isn't my way, right? But I enjoy the podcast. Is this my money? No, this is my enjoyment. I get to talk to really cool people. I get to let people, the listeners, know what is possible. And I'm all about possibilities. So what do I want? That was hard for me because for a long time I walked away from the corporate. I just said enough. I'm done with the politics. I'm done with the hidden agendas that typically aren't so hidden if you know what to look for, all that stuff. So it's understanding what you want right now and being okay with it changing six months down the road and being prepared for it to shift and being okay in your head space with the business changing. So the artist who loves to do this kind of artwork, and that's something else I say, I'm the flavor of the month sometimes. I'll have a client who is got a really big, group of friends, and all their friends book me, and then they move on to somebody else 6 months later. So that is a reality of small business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely is. Well, and this too shall pass. Nothing is forever. And staying true to your values and knowing who you are transcends what you want in the moment. And I think that's why we spend so much time in values conversations in my consulting world, which I think that feels very, doesn't feel very billable hours to talk about values. But honestly, are there any other billable hours that matter? If you don't have that crystallized, and not in your mission statement, not in your company's vision statement that's stuck on a wall, like legitimately your values as a human being, what is your North Star? And that's where you got to start.
Something that I've always been stuck on all through my life is ethics. That sounds really weird, but there's this idea once people show you who they are, believe them. And that's hard. It's a hard lesson sometimes, right? But I'm big on trust and ethics. And if I can't trust you, I won't do business with you. But that's just mine. Other people have different values. And some people just need money right now. And so you make different decisions if that is your focus for right now. Right? And that doesn't mean that you can't shift that focus later on once you get to that certain income level where your needs are being met, where all your bills are paid and you've got extra money left over to decide, okay, what is the best use for this extra amount of funds that we have?
I think setting priorities is tantamount. My dad used to say when I was growing up, you can have anything you want, can't have everything you want. And internalizing that as a visionary, as a CEO, as a business owner, and bringing that back to your team and trusting your team to share that, sharing what the goal is. because a lot of the entrepreneurs that I work with start building a remote work team first. So they may be hiring people from Ukraine or the Philippines or India or something like that, and building trust over the screen with remote work takes a lot of intentionality and a lot of vulnerability. Because remote global workers in particular, are very used to businesses taking advantage, using them for 6 to 8 months, and then, having to find something else. So building an overseas team that can be a long-standing team and really be an integral part of your business takes a high degree of intentionality. And those are the teams I really like to help people build. I think that it brings so much innovation and perspective change to your business, and so much insight to be operating from a multicultural standpoint.
It also takes flexibility.
Yes.
I was lucky that my dad was Air Force, so I traveled all over. And then with my career, I traveled all over, which means different countries, different cultures, different norms, different belief systems, different custom. I tell people that when I moved to Italy, I sat on my hands when I would go into meetings because I didn't want to offend people, and they talk with their hands a lot, and different things mean different things. And I didn't want to say the wrong thing, so I sat on my hands. But it's little things like that that you don't think about until you're in those situations and someone mentions something that a light bulb goes off. Oh no, I've been doing XYZ, which is normal for me, but it's not okay for them,
Mm-hmm. When you're studying literature, there's this concept of the willing suspension of disbelief. When you're like reading fiction, you can't pick apart the Marvel movie or the comic books or whatever. You just go with the story, okay? Just willingly suspend your powers of disbelief for 5 minutes and enjoy the entertainment value. But I think when you're working with cultures, when you're working across cultures, it's this willing suspension of ego, of accepting that you don't know and that you can't know until you ask. And that is very hard, for a lot of people to do, to just say, dude, I don't know. Tell me what life is like what's happening right now. And it's okay. Like, in some ways, that's so much more powerful, to not know the answer.
So when someone comes to you and they really struggle with their values, how do you get them clear? Is there a way to do that, or do you just keep asking and asking? Well, why? What? How do you work with people?
A lot of whys. I tend to be very selective with the clients that I work with, because I fired a number of them because it didn't go well, because I was like, we are not speaking the same language. I'm not a good fit for you. And I do think, when you're in the digital marketing space, you talk about qualified leads all the time. And for most people, qualified leads are, do they have the money to pay me? And that's not my qualified lead at all. My qualified lead is the person who is willing to do the work, who's willing to be introspective, who's really willing to dive in and think, okay, why am I like this? Why is this important to me? Where did this come from? And I think you get to one value, you get one really good value off the top. Most people are like, I really value honesty. Okay, we can work with that. Why? Where did that value come from? And then you start unraveling, the origin of that value system. And then you can start getting into, the deeper things. Like, at my core, when it comes to firing people, and it was the same way when it came to students, and I had to write them up for getting in trouble in class. At my core, I believe no one got out of bed this morning to suck at life. No one got up and said, I want to fail this class, or I want to get sent to the principal's office, or I want to get fired from my job. So when you get to that point of, we've crossed the Rubicon, we are now at this point of no return. How did we get here? It wasn't just, I felt like it. other factors came into play. And I believe that I believe every person is worth the time it takes to figure out why we ended up at that point. So we can never be at that point again. We can avoid having to go back there, and we can fix the underlying things that came along. That value for me came because it's the most random thing in the world. I can't believe I'm explaining this on a podcast, but my mom volunteered at my elementary school, and she mentored a boy that lived in my neighborhood named Reggie, who couldn't read, and we were in 5th grade, and I was so jealous of my mom spending so much time on Reggie. I'm like, Reggie comes over after school for brownies, and you haven't made me brownies in weeks, Mom. I don't understand. And she's like, Reggie doesn't have anybody else to spend this amount of time on him, and he has gotten to this point in his life, and he is working at a deficit, and he deserves that deficit to be repaid. So I'm the one who can, and I will, because Reggie didn't ask for this situation, and I have the ability to do better by Reggie, so I'm going to do it. It's like, okay, got it. Everybody deserves to wake up in the morning and have someone else believe the best in them. Nobody got up to fail today. That's where that one came from. And then, we go on a whole long line of my mom and my dad and where your values come from.
That's cool. That's again, off topic, but not off topic. That's how I feel about my skill set. I don't have any desire to change anybody's belief about anything. That's not my mission. However, I have a certain skill set, and it is my obligation to utilize the skills and the gifts and the talents that I was given or that I've developed. So that's sort of my underlying theme throughout my work with my clients, through the podcast, to normalize this idea of how energy, psychology, mindset, how that is critical for you to feel confident in your business and to grow it the way that you envision it happening, right?
There was a reason why those gifts were given to you. You were supposed to do something with them, and you're obligated to contribute. Absolutely.
And that's my take.
Yeah,
so when people say, oh, but all these people need to know, well, it's not my mission to change anyone's mind. It's just not. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion. We all have our own realities inside our head. Whatever we believe to be true is true for us. Our history, our traumas, our teachings, our parents, our social groups, our schools, our education, all of that went into making us who we are. And we are all completely different, even if we have some things in common. But we all have our own movie picture going on in our head about what is reality. And I love the marble thing. I love marbles. I'm right on board with that. I can suspend, the whole Doctor Strange with the multiverse. I mean, I love that movie. I can't tell you how many times I've watched that movie. Because that's how we are in our head. What we believe to be true is true. Even if you experienced the same event and we were at the same place at the same time, I view it one way, you remember it and view it completely differently.
Yeah. But I think we see that in American politics so much today that we want to discredit someone else's perspective and understanding of reality so strongly in order to hold on to our own. And, a rising tide floats all boats. Your perception of reality doesn't take anything away from mine. They're different, but they don't necessarily have to be subtractive. They can be additive. And it's, incumbent upon us to always look for the way that we can help push forward by being an additive rather than knocking something down or yucking somebody's yum or, however you want to wrap it. But it's really interesting that when you were talking about perspective and reality, you went to Marvel, because I immediately went to remembering Stephen Colbert way back when he was on the Colbert Report in the early 2000s, and truthiness being the word that got added to the Oxford English Dictionary that year because of how much he had used truthiness on his show. But that's really what we're talking about. You're really talking about someone's perspective on reality, and it's not a fixed point, and it's okay.
And it's okay. And that's the part that's missing in so much of the dialogue, right? It's okay for you to believe what you believe. I don't have to agree with you. And maybe I just flat out totally don't agree with you, but I'm not you.
Yeah.
So why do I believe that it should be my role to browbeat you with something and denigrate you because you don't believe the way that I believe? When you probably think that I'm, not quite bright for believing what I believe, right? But it doesn't have to be so divisive.
And that's such an important understanding to have in a position of leadership, to be able to operate with at least that level of compassion, but hopefully that level of empathy to take the moment to say, okay, what's happening in your day-to-day life that's making this situation the way that it is for you, and how can we make it better, so that we build a company culture that is respectful and appreciative of what people bring to the table, their full lived life experiences, and their alternate realities that make everyone else's reality stronger for it.
I'm going to mention this because it just, whatever comes into my head on these shows is what comes out of my mouth, okay? There were specific times of the year when I was running some teams that politics were off the table. This is not the place for political discussion because it was so divisive. Now, that didn't mean that the thoughts didn't already show, the words that came out about other topics didn't already let you know exactly what their feelings were. But the debate during office hours was off the table because I didn't want the divisiveness. We're a team and we have to function cohesively. And some people, the anger would take over, and then reason goes out the window. If anger takes over, you're not even aware of what you're saying or how illogical, it might be for you to expect to change someone's mind. I mean, that's not a logical stance, but people get so into it. Oh, if I just tell you this, you're going to come to my side. No, I'm not.
No.
I'm an adult. I've made up my mind decades ago, probably, right?
Yeah. Well, and just dig your heels in more, for the ego, the risk of being wrong or admitting that you were wrong or that you changed your mind, because we've talked about change and the inevitability of change, and this too shall pass. But I think it's very difficult in the last 10 years for people in professional, but also in political discourse, to say I had a change of heart, or I learned something new, or the situation changed, like I, for quite some time, said I never wanted my artwork to be responsible for paying my mortgage. And right now in 2024, I run a fine art gallery and my art contributes significantly to my mortgage. And it was a problem I said I didn't want. Now I do want it, and it's okay. My perspective changed, and I decided I was willing to take on things before that I didn't want to do.
But mindset shifts can totally change the way we feel about a situation. I never had a desire to have a podcast. I just didn't. And then people kept asking me. And at one point, I'm like, okay. There was no tension. There was no angst. It was just the next logical step. There are growth points along the journey, right? Everything is a journey. And so where you think you're going to end up, most likely is not your final destination. That's just one stop along the way. Maybe it's the next train station you come to, right? But there's another train station beyond that you may be ready to explore at some point.
And isn't life so much more fun when we just allow that to happen and we're just like, okay, we're at peace with it. This is again, probably completely off topic, but one of the conversations I used to have with students before prom night or homecoming night was, okay, look, guys, I know that you've watched a million teen movies, and I know that you have right now in your head this movie reel of exactly the way this night is supposed to go for you, whatever that is. Before you get in the car tonight, turn off the movie and just show up. I promise you, if you just show up, whatever movie you have in your head is completely wrong, but the movie you're going to live is going to be so much better if you stop trying to make it the perfect movie that you have in your head. Just let it go and be present for the event, be present for the thing, and then you get the memory reel, which is way cooler than the movie that you thought you were writing. Like, let the script go. Just live the moment. It's fine. Be present.
I love that. And that is so true for business as well, because there's so many people doing so many trainings and so many lead magnets out there that, oh, I just got to have this. I just got to have this. I just need to know this. I need to know this. It's like, no, you don't. Take one step. That's all. Take one step. Let all the other stuff go. You don't know what went into them getting to that place of knowledge where they're comfortable doing that. You don't need to be comfortable doing that. Do your business. Add one step at a time. When you get comfortable with that, add another one. But do it. This is going to sound a little bit harsh. Try to do it in the right order. And I know that's kind of impossible when
some rules and regulations you should
because you don't really know.
There's some legal things you have to do, like taxes and legal entities, check some boxes, do it in a reasonable order, be respectful of others, It's kind of like the golden rules from elementary school.
But that can be hard. What do I do next? When I'm starting out, I don't know anything except this, whatever I'm good at, right? That one little piece of the business, which I think is my whole business, but it's really just one aspect of the business, right? So how do we get people straight on figuring out where to start?
I don't know. How do you approach it?
I don't know. Every client I work with is different. It's so funny. I have people who breed horses. I have people who are psychologists, people who run recovery rehab facilities. I have real estate, all kinds of stuff. And so their business is totally different, right? And they're all different stages of their business. So I come back to, what do you want? And sometimes I take it back, even after I've worked with people for a couple of years or sometimes more. What is your ideal day? And that can be hard too, figuring out what is my ideal day, either at work or on a personal level, right? But what is their goal? Is it really where we're trying to go with that? And then we see what's missing from those. Well, we create an awareness of where they want to be. And we focus on that, and we create action steps to get the missing pieces to come into play. And we keep doing course corrections to get them to where they want to go. But first you have to figure out, where do you want to be? What do you want to do? What is your target, right? What do you love? All those weird, squishy questions that business doesn't really ask. It's like,
free will is hard, isn't it?
How much money did you make? What are your expenses? How much money do you have coming in? How much do you have in the bank? Well, what do you want to do? Well, I want to make money. Well, I want $1 million. That's an easy answer, right? I want to make $1 million. Well, why don't we start on maybe doubling what you're making right now? Think that might be more doable than $1 million, which has no meaning to you internally, right?
I think free will is a tough thing because, technologically speaking, there's no excuse in 2024 to knowledge. There's no barrier to knowledge. You can find it, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to learn, however you want to grow, you can find the resource. usually for the bargain basement price of $27 or less online. I don't know how that got to be the magic number, but you can find it. So I think the question of what do you want is so much harder of a question now than what it was for our parents or our grandparents when, there were all these tangible barriers to personal growth, to mental growth. So we are really living in a time where you can expand and be and want anything and feasibly attain it if you have the motivation and dedication to get there, which is tough.
Big words. So you mentioned resources. You have some resources our listeners can take advantage of. Talk to us about that. Where can they find you?
So I am on Instagram at Amanda McCallister Consultant. I have a website, which is amanda-mccallister.com. If you don't put the hyphen in there, you will land on my artwork page, and I am not sorry. Please enjoy my photography.
Cool.
Please enjoy my paintings. So both of those domains are mine. So you will end up in the right place either way. If you are an artist looking for help, I do that coaching on a one-on-one basis. So I don't have any products or freebies. That's just reaching out and saying, hey, talk to me. I usually don't charge for that. I really enjoy helping other artists grow and develop as entrepreneurs and figure out what they want. And I think in the art world, especially when it comes to stepping into that business role, everybody is willing to charge you as an artist, and very few people are willing to pay you as an artist. So that consulting is free. If you are a solopreneur or an entrepreneur that's trying to build or grow a team, that is a process that typically starts with my ready to hire assessment and determining where you are in your business. I will give you the link to that for your show notes, and your audience will have a coupon code to be able to access that. I think it's Focused 24 that my team set up for me for that discount code. And then I do live coaching the last Tuesday of every month. You can hop on and you send me your questions beforehand so you know that they get answered. I don't want anybody to feel like they're sitting through for, a full hour and they didn't get to raise their hand and ask a question. That kind of sucks. But yeah. And speaking of podcasts, I started pre-recording for my podcast to start. Our first episode drops on November 4th. We're the Dream Team Strategy.
Cool. Cool. And you're on LinkedIn too, right? Are you on LinkedIn?
Yes, I am on LinkedIn. Amanda McCallister.
All of the links will be in the show notes below. You can just click on them and they'll take you right to her. Well, we are coming up on the end of our time together. So before we go, do you happen to have any final thoughts for our listeners? We covered so many topics, everything from Marvel to to train rides.
My favorite closing thought is from author Zora Neale Hurston. She says, you have to know there to go there. And you really have to stop and spend some time figuring out where it is you want to go in order to get there.
Cool. And I think we discussed that throughout the conversation. So that's a really cool ending to our show. So I want to thank you for being here. I've had a really cool conversation. I love it anytime we can throw in some fantasy stuff. I'm into Marvel and sci-fi and all that kind of stuff. But I want to thank you for being here. I appreciate your time so much, and I really enjoyed our conversation because we seem to be like minds, and that's always fun to meet people that get what you say and get what you do and get how you feel and think. So thank you for that. And I want to
thank you for having me on, and thank you for spending time for me today.
Yeah, sure. We should do it again. And I want to thank the listeners for tuning in again. Every Tuesday, we drop a new episode. Drop me a line if there's somebody that you think would be really interesting for us to have on the show. I'd appreciate your time with that. But until next time, I want to thank everyone for being here. This is your host, Jean Border, with another episode of the Focused Practical Dreamer's Journey podcast. Until next time.
We trust you enjoyed this episode of the Focused Practical Dreamer's Journey podcast. Energy Work to Better Your Business, hosted by energy healer Jean Border. Remember to visit our website at www.focusedpracticaldreamer.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Focused Practical Dreamers Journey.